What's up, guys? It's Tricks Ridiculous back with another video, and in this one we're going to be talking about the melee problem in Marvel's Avengers. Before we do, be sure to like and subscribe if you do like the content. It's a great way to support the channel and I greatly appreciate it. But without further ado, let's get right into it. So this is something the community has kind of been suspect of for a little bit, and it wasn't really a major problem earlier on in the life of the game. But as we're starting to see more end game content, it's starting to become more and more apparent that melee is not good enough in the highest end content of Marvel's Avengers. We're seeing ranged builds, even for characters that were traditionally melee characters, like Thor, Captain America. We're seeing them go with more ranged builds because it's simply more efficient, more effective, and more powerful. So why is this? Now, before we get into all of that, this is not meant to be throwing shade on anybody. If you have a melee build and your melee build is fire, more power to you. I play melee on a couple of my characters too, and I'm not going to change it. But there's no denying that for the highest level of endgame content and the absolute most finely tuned builds that put out the most DPS, that can, solo, super adaptoid, like the really, really high end stuff, it's all range. Range is the more efficient option. Now, this isn't meant to be like one of those things that's like such a 1%er problem that you're so min-maxed that you start to see the little cracks in, balance in the game. But it's becoming pretty obvious for a couple of reasons. So there's kind of a small fix and then a big fix that I'm going to propose. So I'll start with the small fix. The small fix is kind of the easier one, right? The problem, in my opinion, with melee damage is the battery effect. Okay, now with ranged, if you're playing, let's say, a scatter shot Kate Bishop or a split shot Bag of Tricks Hawkeye, something like that, all of your ranged attacks, every single piece of damage that you throw out there will have some form of element, right? Because that's how the gear works. The gear will give every shot of your ranged attack an element. And the way the battery effect works in this game, of course, you prime them with one element, you finish them with the other element, you're going to be getting battery effect nonstop. So the elemental damage is much higher when you're doing it all the time. The problem with melee is, for most characters anyway, your melee elements can only really come on light combo finishers, heavy combo finishers, and then heavy power attacks or signature attacks. All right, so other than maybe say Thor, for example, right? Thor, if you do like if you do like an element on signature attacks and you do that little spin to win attack, the hold down square, that can be really good for, quote unquote melee. But that's kind of the end of it, right? Otherwise, you're only getting your element on the very last hit of your light combo attack or of your heavy combo finisher, right? So that's like 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 hits is going to actually do the battery effect, and the rest of those hits are going to do no elemental damage at all. You're going to be getting no boost from them. So, they're starting to make a few changes. You could see with Black Panther, now it's on, he can do on power attacks, right? So that's, of course, the pounce. Unfortunately, that's kind of the same thing as Thor, where it's really only one attack, right? So you're only really doing that one attack over and over again to get that battery effect and to do that elemental damage. But it's something, right? It's something that we can kind of get that elemental damage for everything. My solution to that is they need to just change it where it's light attacks do an element or heavy attacks do an element. That should be what the perks are. It shouldn't be light combo finishers, heavy combo finishers. It should just be light attacks, heavy attacks. It should be all attacks deal some form of element. That should be what the gear is. I think that's a small fix that will greatly, greatly boost melee's capability in the game. Now, the bigger issue is that melee is extremely difficult to actually use in tough fights. The game is simply not made to reward you for using melee attacks. What I'm saying is, if you think, this was a little bit apparent when we got the Cosmic Cube with Monica. We were it was obviously you can't melee Monica. She's way up there in the sky. So if you were playing a melee build, you were struggling and very frustrated. You had to switch to a ranged build to be able to get that fight done for the most part. And now we're seeing it with Super Adaptoid 2. Super Adaptoid, for most of the fight, he's in the sky, right? He's flying. How are you going to melee him? It's much more risky to be melee and try to complete these fights. The fights are just not made for melee. It's much safer and much more efficient to just be a ranged build. So that's the bigger issue that they're going to have to solve, is kind of reworking some of these boss fights to allow both melee and ranged builds to really be viable, more so than just having ranged builds be the safer, easier, more effective option. Of course, there's no easy way to do that. It's really just in the content that they create, but that remains to be seen. But anyway, I won't waste any more of your time in this video. Those are just my thoughts, and like I said, this is kind of something that some people had some inkling about when the game was kind of in its early stages, and now that we're seeing some end game content, it's becoming more brought to light that melee is subpar compared to range. So not throwing any shade on you melee lovers, people who go pure melee all the time. You guys do you have my full support, but I would like to see you guys get some buffs, some things that can help you guys be able to compete with some of these top tier ranged builds. Anyway, that's it for me in this video. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Again, be sure to like and subscribe if you like the content, and I will see you guys in the next one.